All right, here we go. Lesson 7.6. Percents, fractions, and decimals. It's the concept is this. You need to be able to switch and understand, to switch between the two. You need to be able to convert between the two, decimals, fractions, and percents. The one that that I always start out with is this. If I'm going to talk about a half, how do I write that as a fraction, as a decimal? 0.5, right? Just 0.5. How do I write 1/2 as a percent?
0.50.
No, how do I write? It's just, what is half? What percent is half? 50%, right? You guys all kind of have that one down. And it's important that you keep this in mind when you do this, because this is kind of like your standard, your gauge. You can kind of figure out, am I even in the ballpark, just by remembering this. Okay? First of all, here's the deal. A percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100. A percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100. Here's the deal. If I want to turn 50% into a fraction, it's real simple. You ready for this? And this is the part you should probably write down. If you don't know this by heart, you should probably write this down. To go from a percent to a fraction, you simply put the percent over 100. $50 over 100. What is 50 over 100? 1/2. Doesn't that make sense? I mean, we know that 50% is 1/2. Agreed? So we know that. So if you are ever on a problem and you're like, I don't remember how to do this, go back to 1/2, 0.5, and 50% and see what you did to find those, and that should help you with every other problem that you could possibly have. Does that make sense? Okay? So you tell me then, just really quick, I want you to tell me really quick, without reducing, Ellie, you ready? How do I write that as a fraction, Ellie? 37 over 100. Nice. Okay. Morgan, how do I write that as a fraction? 78 over 100. Right? No matter what, that's what you do. Now, it's possible that you'll have to reduce at that point, but it doesn't change the fact that that's all you do. To turn a percent to a fraction, you simply write it over 100. So let's write that down. Percent to a fraction is put percent over 100. That's what you should have down, unless you know that. If you know that, then you're in good shape. But that is the note. That's the clue, right? Okay. How do I go from a percent to a decimal? Now, here's the deal. Let's go back to this. 50%. Let's go back to 50, because I think we all have a good grasp of 50%. How do I write 50% as a decimal? Well, let's see what you got. Well, how do I write it as a decimal? What do I do? I don't necessarily want to know what the answer is. What do I do, Sladen? Yeah, move the decimal point, which is right here. I'll put that in red. The decimal point is right there, and you move it over 2 spaces, so the answer is 0.50, which you can leave that 0 off, right? So it's 0.5. See, this is where you also want to be able to do this. Remember, if you have the number line down between 1 and 0, I mean really down good, you're going to be a really good math student for real. There's 0 and 1. So look, 0 is 0%. 1 is 100%. Agreed? Okay. So then, if I have 50%, where is that on as a fraction? You can look right at it. It's right in the middle. That means that it's 1/2. Right? It's a half. That's all stuff that will help you. Anyway, I'm going to write down the rule here. I'm going to write the rule here for you. To go from a percent to a decimal, move the decimal to the left 2 spaces. Right? Doesn't that make sense? Okay, so now we've gone from percent to a fraction, percent to a decimal. Okay, now we need to know how to go from a decimal to a percent. Okay, so here's the deal. We have a decimal. What do we want to say? 0.728. Something that's ugly, right? How do I change that decimal to a percent? What do I do? What do I do? Michael, do you remember? What do I do to turn the decimal to a percent? How? Nope. How do I do it? Donovan, how do I do it? You move the decimal to the right 2 spaces, right? So it's 72.8%. Yes? Okay. What if it's an ugly one like this, though? See, where is, what is 142%? Can somebody tell me about that? Just tell me about 142%. Just tell me about it. Just tell me something that you know about it. Yeah. So then what does that mean? On the number line, where's that going to land? Yeah? Over, it's going to be, but over on the number line, it's going to be over, it's going to be bigger than the number 1, right? Not 100, it's going to be bigger than the 1, right? On the number line, it's going to be over here somewhere, right? Because this is 100%, right? Right? 100% is 1. 200% is 2. 500% is 1,000% is 10, right? Do y'all understand that? I mean, that's the whole deal. That's the deal. So, at 142%, how do I write that as a, then hold on, let's go back. We already did that one. Let's go 3.8. I want to know what that is as a percent. How do I write that as a percent? Well, what was the rule we already said? This decimal to a percent, you move the decimal to the right 2 spaces. Right? So, okay, do it for me. Show me that you know how to do this. Turn 3.8 into a percent. On paper. Always. What do you do when there's not a place to move the decimal, right? You're supposed to move it to the right 2 spaces. And you go, well, oh, there's only 1. What do I do? What do I do? You move it again anyway, right? And then you put a 0 there. Agreed? Right? You've done that. We've done that before. So what is the answer then? 380%. Right? And that should make some sense. If you have 380%, that's going to be between 3 and 4, right? If 300 is 3 and 400 is 4, then 380 is, almost 4, which is 3.8, which is what we had. Okay, what about this? Oops, oh man. I'll go like this then, I'll erase it. All right. How do I turn a decimal to a fraction? Oops. We've done this before. How do you turn a decimal to a fraction? 3.4. How do I turn that into a fraction? What do I do, Jared? You read it. 3 4/10. Right? You simply read it. You might have to reduce, right? But you just read it, and that will get you to at least where you want to be. Okay, how do I turn a fraction into a decimal? Fraction to a decimal. That is, like 3/8. How do I turn that to a decimal? Do you remember this? Morgan, how do I turn a fraction into a decimal? Divide. You simply divide. 3 divided by 8. 8 goes into 3. 0 times. 8 goes into 3. 8 goes into 30. 3 times. 8 goes into 60. 7 times. 5 times. 0.375, right? Right? Okay. And then the last one. How do I turn a fraction into a percent? Now, a couple of things to do here. There's a couple of ways to do this. All right? I'm going to teach you something that I don't remember if I normally teach sixth graders or not. Let me see if we do next chapter. Yeah, maybe. I think we do. Okay, I'll teach it to you today. Here's the deal. To go from a fraction to a percent, one thing you can do is go from a fraction to a decimal, right? And then from the decimal, you move it over to the right, and then you have your percent. You know what I'm saying? So you can do the two-step approach. Do you understand what I'm talking about? You go from a fraction to a decimal, and then you go from a decimal to a percent. You could do that. Totally works. Here's the one-step way. Okay? Here's the one-step way. I'm going to do an easy one. Let's do 0.5. Sorry, 5/10. No, we'll do 1/2. The easiest one possible. Agreed, 1/2 is the easiest fraction there is? Okay. 1/2. Here's how you do it. Are you ready? This is what you'd say. If I want to know what 1/2 is what percent. You ready? You go 1/2 is, what did I put when I put is? Equal sign, right? Is means equals. 1/2 is, and then you go what percent? Don't you agree that's not what we're saying? 1/2 is what percent? Do we all know the answer? What is 1/2? Is 50%. But here's the deal. This is what you do. You go 1/2 is, whenever you're in a word sentence and you say the words what percent, x over 100. 1/2 is what percent? And that's how you do it. From right here, we learn how to do this. What do I do at this point? What do I do? Cross multiply. 2 times x is? What's 100 divided by 2? Oh. Super easy, right? Yeah. Let me give you one. You try this one, okay? It's an easy one, but I want you to do it using my method, all right? We'll go 17. No, I'll make it even easier for you. 3/20. I want you to write that as a percent. As a percent. Okay? All right, here we go. Watch. Here's the deal. If I want to go from 3/20 to a percent, you go 3/20 is what percent? Right? Whenever you say what percent, it's x over 100. Sometimes they'll put n over 100. It doesn't matter, right? Does it matter what the variable is? No. Now what do? Cross multiply. X times 20 is? 20x equals, what's 3 times 100? 300. Divide by 20. Divide by 20. X equals 300 divided by 20 is? 15. So the answer would be 15%. How many of you got 15%? Oh my goodness gracious. You guys are the best students in the history of the world. That's a lie, but you did pretty good. You did pretty good. So, isn't that easy, the one-step way? I mean, you could go to a decimal and then decimal to the, that's fine. That's actually pretty easy too. But I think this way is the easiest. So I'm going to put fraction into a percent is to do the proportion, solve the proportion. Yeah, that's good. Solve the percent proportion. And we'll go 1/2 equals x over 100. That's what you should write, just to kind of like remind you that that's what I'm talking about. When I say solve the percent proportion, it's like 1/2 equals what percent? X over 100. I think you guys pretty much have this down. Let's see if you can do one practice one. Let's do one practice for each kind. Let's do, 1 second here. Yeah, they did this. There was this time anyway. Okay. On the bottom of 331, do 1A, 1B, and 2B. And then this is on page 331. And then on page 332, do number 4. No. Yeah. Do 3A and B and number 4. Okay, do that. Let's see how you did. Here we go. On page 331. It says 55% as a fraction. What do I do to go, if you have your notes, what do you do to go from a fraction, from a percent to a fraction? This is really hard. Sladen. Over 100. Can that be reduced? How many of you have 11 20ths? What'd you put? Did you get it?
No, I didn't reduce it.
You just didn't reduce it?
No, I did, but I didn't keep it. So I have it.
Got it. 1B. 4%. Listen, you know what a lot of people do? I mean, well, we'll get to this in a second. Okay, 4%. How do I write 4%? Right? It's when you go 4%. That's kind of an easy one. We'll talk about this when we do decimals. But 4%. How do I change that to a fraction? It's really hard again. What do I do? Over 100. How many have 1/25th? What'd you put? You have 4 over 100 though? Okay. 2B. It says write 2% as a decimal. This is the one I'm talking about. 2%. You know what a lot of people do with this? What do you think a lot of people do?
0.2.
What?
0.2.
Yeah, they do 0.2 and they go, that's 2%. Looks a lot like 2%, doesn't it? Doesn't that look a lot like 2%? It is not. You've got to know. This is where you have to go, wait a second. What's the rule? Did you put 0.2?
Yeah, you pressed it.
Yeah, it happens a lot. So what's the rule? You should actually do the steps. It's to move the decimal to the right? No. To the left to 0.02. Know this. Is 2% big? No, that is really close to 0. Agreed? I mean, that is really close to 0. Is 20% really close to 0? No. There's a big difference between 2% and 20%. Agreed? Okay. Page 332, 3A. It says write each decimal as a percent. So it's 0.52. How do I write that as a percent? What do I do? What do you do to turn a decimal into a percent? Move the decimal to the right 2 spaces. 1, 2. 52%. And this is where, listen, this is what I'm talking about. If I have 0.52, what's that really close to? About half, right? When you turn it into a percent, isn't it going to be right near 50%? Doesn't that make sense? 0.52 is going to be real close to a half, and that means it's going to be really close to a half when you change it to a percent. It's going to be the same. Agreed? Makes sense? They're both really close to a half. Okay. 3B. Good one. 0.05. What percent is that? What do I do? Move it to the right 2 spaces. Yes. 5%. Right? How many of you got 5%? Okay. And then the last one, number 4 down there, it says write the fraction 1/20th as a percent. 1/20th. How do I write that as a percent? What do I do? This is the one. What do I do here? No. How do I write that as a percent? I'm changing it from a fraction to a percent. I'm changing this to a percent. I solve the percent proportion, right? Which is what? 1/20th is what percent?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Did you guys do that? My answer is 5%, right? How many of you got 5%? Okay. I think you guys are ready. I'll give you your homework. What do I have here? 60/27? That's not true. Okay, I'm going to change this. I need to change it from red web. That's not right. So it's page 333, 6 through 5 through 35 even, and 52 to 58 even. Well, that's what I did. Okay. It's right. I have that in room.